Well, I'm back with Lawana Chambers Lawson as Tiffany Smith on the record with Tiffany. Lawana, so tell our audience about you. Well, Lawana. I know you don't like talking about yourself, but this I'm going to brag on you a little bit. This is one of the best young nonprofit professionals, and you're also out there just killing it in the investment world too. I hate even trying to pin you down and put you in a box like, oh, she writes grants, but because you do far more than that. So that's just one thing that you do that you're blessing all the rest of us with. But you also, with your investments, I mean, I really think you just teach people all around a lot of different things that they can do with their lives. And you have a podcast. And you have, I mean, like, what else, girl? What are you doing? And you're on this board and that board, and you started, I mean, I don't know if we have enough time to talk about all your stuff.
Oh, man, I am, well, thank you. I get teary when I think about these things, but thank you. I mean, I guess the best way to describe myself is, I was that kid that I was blessed to have both parents. We had a car accident, and that car accident changed all of our lives. My father is a paralyzed veteran. He was a Marine Corps, active duty Marine Corps before he got hurt, broke his neck, and severed his spinal cord. And so he and my mother went through quite a bit. My mother also got hurt pretty bad in the car accident. And, I was in the front seat. My dad was holding me down we had a Blazer at the time, a Chevy Blazer, and we had traveled from California to see my aunt in Norfolk, Virginia. I think it was either, we were either going to Norfolk. I still get the story mixed up because I forget, but we were either going to Norfolk, Virginia, or we were going to D.C. I can't remember if her husband was stationed at Walter Reed at the time or if he was stationed at the amphibian base in Norfolk. But we were traveling there, and on I-64 is where we hit a patch of ice, and the Chevy Blazer rolled like at least 7 or 8 times. And as it was rolling, my mom got ejected from the back seat of the Blazer. She was an inch away. The cops told me she was an inch away from falling into the James River. I'll never forget that. Oh, my God. And yeah, 'cause I remember as a kid, I was just like, where's my mommy? And my dad, he was holding me down. I was like 5, I think 4 or 5. I always forget. And my dad was holding me down, and as he was holding me down, his head was hitting the top of the car, roof of the car. And so he broke his neck, severed the spinal cord. Oh. And I just remember waking up to all these white lights, and I could see my dad sort of like mangled and twisted up into like the steering column in the Blazer. And I just remember looking back, and there was nothing but like the mashing, like the whole ceiling was down. And I just remember looking back, and I didn't see my mother, and I just freaked out. And so I was just sitting in the passenger seat, and I was looking out the window because I was stuck. And the cop was like banging on the window. He was like, "Are you okay?" And, it was just like, I don't even remember what happened next, but I just remember I was outside of the Blazer, and I said, "Where's my mom?" And at first the cop said, "I don't know." Oh. And they were like, "We haven't found her." And I just remember like my whole, because me and my mom were very close when I was growing up, because my dad, he's Marine Corps, he managed the store. And so he was always gone, he was never really home, and he was a drill sergeant. So, he was always out. And I just remember I used to spend so much time with my mother. And when they couldn't find her, I felt like at that point, I felt like I'd lost both of my parents. Like I felt like they were both dead. You know what I mean? Like my dad was mangled up, unconscious, and I didn't know where my mother was. So I thought at that moment that I was an orphan. you know? And so I was just like, and then, you know, you fast forward, I stayed in the Ronald McDonald House while my parents were getting it back together. My mother didn't recognize me. I'll never forget. I always tell her the story. We both cry. But when she was in the hospital, I walked in to see her for the first time since the car accident. I don't know how much time had gone by. And I walked up to her bed and I said, "Mommy," and I had my arms reached out. And she did not know who I was. She said,
"Oh my God.
Who is that?" And I'll never forget that. She said, "Who is that?" And the nurse had to tell her, "That's your daughter." And then my grandmother came in, and she went to her mother and said, "Mommy." And then she was like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it was like I was a threat at that point. Like I was threatening to take love away from her, right? Or something like that. It was very odd. And I tell her that story till this day. And she always looks at me and she's like, "I'm so sorry that happened. I don't remember any of that," right? Neither of my parents really remember a lot from that time. But, you know, you fast forward, and I say I was blessed to have both of them, because even though I always say at that point I lost a bit of both of my parents because of the car accident, you know what I mean? None of us were ever the same again after that. The thing that my father told me, I'll never forget, he was laid on his bed because, you know, his spinal cord was severed and his neck was broken. So he was laid on his bed, stretched out, looking up at the ceiling. And he said to me, what you need to know is that you cannot rely on your mother or I. You have to be strong enough to take care of yourself. Just in case something happens to us, you need to still be okay. And it was like, ever since, I'll never forget those words. Yeah. I'll never forget that day and just the feeling that I had where I just said, okay, we have to get this together. Like, we have to figure this out.
Because, Luana, you're like the most optimistic person I know. Like, you always have a smile on your face. You always have a plan B, C, D, whatever's going on, you know. Wow. Yeah. Talk about
it's because of them.
Wow.
I'm blessed to have them both. You know, I really am. And like, just going through life with both of them, they are both just brilliant, beautiful people. You know what I mean? And they're both just like me. You can't tell them nothing. They're going to go out here. If you tell them they can't do it, they're going to find a way to do it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. My dad is, you know, he's the whiz when it comes to investing. He's a huge trader. You know, he hasn't worked ever. I mean, I don't even remember the last time he worked, you know, before he got hurt. You know, he went to school, put himself through graduate school. When I was going through high school, we was both in school together, you know, and he's, you know, found his wife. My stepmother, Shelly, she's a CPA, you know, from New York, and just, you know, they are stable. They are probably the most stable family members.
So after the accident, he went on and kind of took control of his life.
That's right. Because he was always, you know, my grandfather I never met him, you know, sad that I never met my grandfather Curtis, but he had to have been amazing, because my father is, I mean, his investment knowledge, his financial knowledge, he got that from his father, you know, and he just imparted a lot of that on me. Because my grandfather, you know, owned the project building. The building, you know, my dad and them, they grew up in Chicago in Inglewood, and that building my grandfather owned. You know, he owned the whole doggone project building. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, what? I had no idea. And my dad got a lot of his business sense from his dad. You know, he was a brilliant man. He had a gas station. He had all these different things that he owned, and some of the kids got some of that. My dad's the youngest, so of course he didn't get that. So, you know, it's just, but to see my dad as the most stable still, you know, everyone else got land and this and that and the third, but my dad is the one that everyone turns to when they need something. You know, and my mom is also like that to her family. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my mom is like that. You know, she's the emotionally on point person. You know, my mom's side of the family, you know, they got the Creole thing going on, and they really struggle with emotions and talking about what they've gone through. And my mother is the one who's like, listen, yeah, incest, this happened. And she lays it out. And she's like, if you want to talk about it, I'm here. I got you. You know, I love you. You know, nothing against you. You were kids. We were kids. You know, like that's how my mom is. She's so strong on so many different levels. So both my parents are just, you know, they help me in so many different ways, you know.
Powerful story. So, I mean, at 5 years old to kind of realize, to be told something like you're going to have to depend on yourself, but to really actually grasp that and to put your life on a trajectory where you are doing that, because that I mean, you wrote your first book at what, 17, 18? You were a kid.
Yeah, I was probably like 15. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were a kid when you wrote that first book. Lawana Chambers Lawson, you are inspirational to me and I believe you'll be inspirational to many people that hear this. So I want you all to come back, listen to Lawana, because we're going to talk a little bit more about how a person goes from a massive car accident where both parents are severely injured, father's paralyzed, and mom is put into a form of arrested development there. And how do you get from that to having, you know, being number one in a category in a book for your book on Amazon? Like, how does a person go from that to top of their game? It's worth hearing. And this is an inspirational woman, and we need that right now. We need to hear some inspiration in the midst of all this chaos. No matter how bad it gets, there's still opportunity. You still have strength and power within you. And Luana's a prime example of that. So come on back and let's talk some more with Lawana Chambers Lawson. You've been listening to On the Record with Tiffany.